This is CBN NewsWatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm George Thomas. In our nation's capital, a U.S. House panel is investigating the country's response to the coronavirus pandemic, including when a vaccine might be available. CBN reporter Mark Martin joins us now with more. Mark.
Yeah, George, that's right. The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, appeared before the House panel, along with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention head Dr. Robert Redfield. Fauci told lawmakers that once a coronavirus vaccine is approved as safe and effective, Americans should have widespread access within a reasonable amount of time. Fauci shared cautious optimism that there would be a vaccine, particularly by next year. Officials will draft a priority list for who gets vaccinations first.
I believe ultimately over a period of time in 2021, if we have, and I think we will have, a safe and effective vaccine, that Americans will be able to get it. I don't think that they will have everybody getting it immediately in the beginning. It probably will be phased in, and that's the reason why we have the committees to do the prioritization of who should get it first. But ultimately, within a reasonable period of time, the plans now allow for any American who needs a vaccine to get it within the year 2021.
Right, and
The White House has instructed federal health authorities to carry out a plan called Operation Warp Speed. It calls for the manufacture of 300 million doses of a vaccine on a compressed timeline. George.
Mark, on this issue of vaccines, you know very well that in order for a vaccine to become a reality, you need people to test it. Are U.S. leaders having trouble finding people who are willing to do this?
It does not seem like that. Fauci says 250,000 people have said they're interested in participating in studies involving coronavirus experimental vaccines. George, back to you.
All right, terrific, young man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. The November elections are getting closer. President Trump backed away from the idea of delaying the election over concerns about mail-in ballots after he tweeted it would lead to the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. The idea, as you can imagine, was quickly shot down by Democrat and Republican lawmakers. But the president raised an issue many are already concerned about. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy reports.
President Trump's tweet about mail-in voting leading to what he called would be an inaccurate and fraudulent election, and even asking to delay the election, was quickly shot down by both Democrat and Republican lawmakers. The president's tweet that began the political uproar asked delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote. But speaking to the media later, the president made his views clear.
Do I want to see a date change? No, but I don't want to see a crooked election. This election will be the most rigged election in history if that happens.
Trump points to concerns over voter fraud and the massive problems with the presidential election depending so heavily on mail-in voting.
Well, what I want to explain to people, but it doesn't need much explanation. I mean, you look at article after article, New York's mail vote disaster. Tens of thousands of mail ballots have been tossed out in this year's primaries. What will happen in November?
New York tried to let voters stay safe from the coronavirus by letting them vote by mail in the June primaries, which led to massive delays. The system was overwhelmed with votes, and many races still haven't been counted weeks later. And New York warns the situation could get even worse in November.
a switch from almost no absentee ballots to approximately 50% absentee ballots with 2 months' notice. Really strains the system.
Trump referred to multiple news stories about the concerns with mail-in voting. California also experienced major problems, where more than 100,000 mail-in votes were rejected in the presidential primaries back in March. The Heritage Foundation's Hans von Spakovsky explained on CBN's Faith Nation that one problem with mail-in voting is the rejection rate is much higher than polling places.
Just look at the most recent elections and look at all the problems with the U.S. Postal Service misdelivering and not delivering absentee ballot.
And he doesn't think focusing on improving the mail-in process is the answer.
What election officials need to be doing is trying to ensure that as many polling places are open to vote in person. The CDC just released guidelines on how to safely do in-person voting with all those kind of safety protocols in place.
The president doesn't have the power to change the date of the election anyway. That's up to Congress, and they certainly don't plan to do so. But the concerns over a heavily dependence on mail-in voting aren't new. A Wall Street Journal editorial back in May warned that a close presidential election could result in an election nightmare. A close race where votes aren't counted, thrown out, and lawsuits filed. It could even result in an election that further divides an already polarized nation. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Thank you, Sir Ben. Friends and political officials from both parties are remembering Herman Cain, who died from complications from COVID-19. Cain grew up poor but was highly successful in business and a licensed minister. He even ran for the White House back in 2012. President Trump honored him on Thursday.
Let me begin by expressing our sadness at the passing of a wonderful man and a dear friend of mine, Herman Cain. He was a very special person. I got to know him very well.
Herman Cain was 74. We head overseas now to the case of a missing Chinese bishop imprisoned by China's communist government for decades. Well, his case has now got the attention of Congress, that coming as fears of his death grow by the day. Dale Hood has a story.
Bishop James Xu Jimin has spent 40 years of his life in prison for refusing to bow to the Chinese Communist government. Now 88 years old and not seen for many years, there's growing fear that he's dead, and Congress wants answers.
President Xi Jinping, where is Bishop Xu and what have you done to him?
Congressman Chris Smith recounted meeting Bishop Xu many years ago and said his case is emblematic of the millions of Christians suffering for their faith in China.
Bishop Xu told my delegation after celebrating Mass in a tiny apartment that he prayed for his persecutors, and he especially prayed for the cruel and misguided leadership of the Chinese Communist Party.
In 2018, the Vatican tried to make a deal with the Chinese government to maintain some independence for the Chinese Catholic Church. Most observers call that effort a disaster. The two sides will meet again in 1 month, and there were reports this week that China has already hacked Vatican computers.
He isn't simply a victim of persecution.
Religious freedom advocate Nina Shea told the House committee the Vatican's trust of China has been naive and inexplicable.
Cardinal Sin of Hong Kong said that the Vatican's silence in the agreement of 2018 on the rights of the faithful underground would allow China to succeed in eliminating the underground church with the help of the Vatican.
The Chinese government is now demanding the appointment of a new bishop to replace Bishop Xu, one who belongs to the state church and who most Catholics view as a traitor who has left the faith. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. ECS is officially a hurricane. The storm knocked out power and caused flooding and small landslides across Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic on Thursday. Packing 80-mile-per-hour winds, the Category 1 storm is expected to drench parts of the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands overnight. Forecasters say the ECS will intensify over the weekend. Hurricane watches are already up for parts of the Florida coastline. AccuWeather's Jeffrey Cornish joins me now with more. Jeffrey, any sense when we can expect, when and where do we expect the storm to make landfall?
Well, it's crossing the southern Bahamas right now, and we fully expect that it's going to come very, very close to Florida this weekend. Now, the path is going to take it awfully close to the east side of Florida, and you can see a satellite estimate of where the rainfall is right now, as if there were a radar network across the entire Caribbean. So it's still a bit southeast, hundreds of miles southeast of Miami. But as you mentioned, hurricane warnings are in effect for the Bahamas and even portions of the coastal waters near Port St. Lucie, Florida. And we expect this storm to impact Florida this weekend. Here we can see that our track is keeping it barely east of Florida. Now, there will still be tropical storm impacts in Florida this weekend, but the most likely spot for a U.S. landfall may ultimately be Monday into Tuesday into the Outer Banks as the orientation of the coastline really bumps it east there.
What kind of damage could we see from this storm?
Overall, because the storm is moving and because it's not going to sit and produce torrential rain in the same area for days and days like we saw with Harvey back in 2017 or a little more recently with Florence in South Carolina, because it's moving, we expect some areas to see 2 to 4 inches of rain with potential for up to near 10 inches of rain. We did see a couple of areas within Puerto Rico see 10 inches of rain over the past day or two. There will also be strong winds. The Bahamas could see potential for up to 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And as you can see with this moving most likely to the north and west, here's our forecast for gust potential. Our AccuWeather local storm max is up to 100-mile-per-hour gusts for the Bahamas and more likely 60 to 80-mile-per-hour gusts for the Space Coast, places like near Cape Canaveral, and also into places like the Outer Banks, likely to see 60-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts.
Yeah, you have your projections. Some of these projections, Jeffrey, have the storm reaching as far north as New England and Maine Tuesday or Wednesday, right?
It's very true, and by that point, we would expect this to become a tropical storm. But the way the coast juts out, Cape Cod is way out there to the east. Long Island is jutting east as well. And those areas, though we don't often associate them with hurricanes and tropical storms, they do get hit every once in a while. And we expect this storm to probably weaken some into a tropical storm, especially after the some land interaction with North Carolina. But by Tuesday, the leading edge of tropical storm force winds may be somewhere near Cape May, New Jersey, more likely just barely to the east. And it could impact places like Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts into the middle of the week, probably as a weaker storm. Still impactful with heavy rain and some wind.
Yeah. Real quickly, Jeffrey, the hurricane season has really gotten off to a fast start. Are you guys forecasting plenty of tropical activity still to come?
We are. It's been a record start when it comes to the number of tropical storms to this point. In fact, we have a graphic to show you how active it has been. There's this statistic called accumulated cyclone energy, and it's not the most conversational thing out there, but it's a good way of quantifying how much wind energy we've seen. It looks at the length of time in which storms have been around. If we have a storm that lasts 5 days, it produces a lot of wind energy compared to a flicker of a short storm. And we've seen
Jeffrey,
more than twice the amount of wind energy so far.
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave you right there. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show. Jeffrey Cornish with AccuWeather. Folks, coming up next, a college track runner talks about what happened when she was forced to compete against a transgender athlete, and now why she is fighting back. That story in a moment.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And welcome back to the CBN News Channel. In the world of college and high school sports, there's a battle brewing over whether boys and men who identify as female can compete against biological females. Idaho is one of the epicenters. Its new law bans transgender athletes from female sports. Now, the ACLU is suing the state over the law and is asking the NCAA to boycott Idaho. We're joined today by Madison Kenyon, an Idaho State University track athlete who has filed a motion supporting the law, joined along with her attorney, Christiana Holcomb, with the Alliance Defending Freedom. Ladies, thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. Madison, let me begin with you. You found yourself competing against a transgender athlete, a biological male, in a college event. What happened?
Yeah, so when I was racing in cross country and in track, I did compete against a male athlete, and both times I lost. And it's just very discouraging and very frustrating because biologically, males are capable of so much more. So when you go out and you're training at the collegiate level, you're putting everything out there and training as hard as you can, and then you get beat by somebody who you can't really compete against because they will naturally hit levels of success in athletics that are higher than what I'm capable as a female. Yeah.
Christiana, to you, what's the significance of what's happening in Idaho?
Well, Idaho is the first state in the nation to pass a Fairness to Women's Sports Act designed for the common sense purpose of ensuring that only biological girls compete on the girls' team. But what the NCAA is doing here is really completely out of step with what the American public wants. A recent poll demonstrated that well over 75% of Americans agree it's unfair to allow males to compete in and to dominate girls' sports. So we really hope the NCAA does not go forward with any boycott of Idaho.
Yeah. Madison, why did you decide to get involved in this issue?
So there are obvious biological differences between males and females that make the way the two compete against each other in sports unfair. Typically, males have more favorable characteristics that allow them to compete at higher levels of success than females. And so when the two compete against each other, it's completely unfair. And so I personally have experienced that, and I've lost to a male, and I know that it's unfair. And so I got involved in this because I thought it was the best way for me to stand up for something that I believe in and to support women's sports and to advocate for these opportunities that should be protected for us, and to let other girls know that if they also think that they want fair competition, that they can speak up about it as well. Yeah.
Christiana, final question to you, ma'am. What would it look like if the NCAA actually boycotted the state, and what will happen if this new law protecting female athletes gets overturned?
Well, if the NCAA boycotts the state of Idaho, that sends a really chilling message to female athletes all across the country that the NCAA doesn't care about your fair competition. And look, ultimately, we do hope that Idaho's Fairness in Women's Sports Act will be upheld. It's consistent with the purpose and the promise of Title IX to female athletes and the objective of providing them with fair competition and the opportunity to showcase their athletic talent.
Madison and Christiana, thank you, ladies, for coming on the show. Wish you a great weekend ahead. Coming up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Coming up, COVID-19 and charitable giving. We'll break down how the pandemic is affecting financial generosity. That story in a moment.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life, life to the fullest. Life in your family, life in your finances, life in your body, mind, and spirit, life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back, folks. You're watching the CBN News Channel. New numbers are giving us a look at how COVID-19 is affecting charitable giving. And the findings might surprise you. Joining me now is Derek Baker, president of Dickerson Baker, to break down what a recent survey found. So great to have you on the broadcast. Are people still giving during the pandemic?
They are. In fact, they're actually giving more.
Can you hear me? Why are they giving? I'm curious, Derek.
Well, it appears that some of the interesting thing that we hear is that everybody is doing poorly these days. But the research that we did today, this week, that we released this week, indicates that approximately as many people are doing better this year than they did last year as those that are doing worse. And what we're seeing is that those folks that are doing better are actually filling the gap and giving more. It's a testament to the generosity of American Christian people.
Yeah, I'm curious, to that point, what should faith-based nonprofits be doing to encourage giving?
Well, number one thing is that they have to really do a good job of telling their story. The other thing is that a lot of fundraisers today and a lot of organizations today think that they only have to do their work virtually. And what our research showed is that about half or more of people, actually up to 80% of the people that we surveyed, said that they would be willing to meet with fundraisers or attend a small gathering in their church or another place. What they want to avoid is the big gatherings, the big events, but they will meet with fundraisers. And so I think it's very heartening news that people are not only just still giving, they're giving generously, and they're willing to be engaged with the ministry organizations even during this pandemic.
Yeah, I'm curious to this point. I mean, the GDP the last quarter lost almost 40%. There are millions of people out of jobs. Did you find it surprising to see giving actually increase during these what are, I mean, all you could say are, catastrophic economic times?
It is interesting, and yet it's not, because we've seen it before. Christians do step up in times of difficulty like this. We've seen that in other crises. And I think what's particularly interesting is a lot of ministries are reporting a surge in giving over the period of March through June. But 7 out of 10 of the people that we talked to said that they see those as over and above giving. It's not going to affect their giving later in the year. Only 3% of the people that we surveyed said that would kind of cause them to decrease less later in the year. So we've seen generosity in the first half of the year. This study focused on what are donors thinking and planning for the second half of the year, and many of them are planning to give more. In fact, twice as many intend to give more than those that intend to give less.
Yeah, incredible, really staggering numbers. So real quickly, are there any factors that might make people stop giving? I mean, you think a pandemic would help them stop giving, but clearly not. But are there any other factors that could stop them from giving?
I think people are being more careful. We asked if they were shifting giving, and they're really prioritizing giving to outreach and evangelism and discipleship, sharing the gospel, and also helping hurting and vulnerable people. Those are kind of the key things. But I think it's very important for organizations to tell that story well, to be unapologetic, because a lot of them are afraid. But it's like, you know what? American Christians will support the ministries that they love.
Yeah.
And they will step up, and it's a testament to the generosity of our folks.
All right, terrific. We'll have to leave you there, Derek. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. Derek Baker, president of Dickerson Baker. Thanks for your insights.
Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. Honoring a civil rights icon, hear this young man deliver a moving tribute to former Congressman John Lewis. That story in a moment.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Finally today, a touching tribute to John Lewis. The former congressman was laid to rest in Atlanta on Thursday. 12-year-old Ty Bree Faw, a young man inspired by Lewis, paid his final respects with a poem. 2 years ago, Ty Bree heard that John Lewis would be traveling to Selma. He and his family traveled 7 hours from Tennessee to meet the legendary civil rights icon, and the two forged a bond. The Lewis family asked Ty Bree to read Invictus, one of Lewis's favorite poems. Take a listen.
It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captive of my soul. John Lewis was my hero, my friend. Let's honor him by getting in good trouble.
Let's honor him by getting into good trouble. That is a great way to pay tribute to a legendary civil rights icon. Well, folks, that is it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Remember, you can find more of our stories and our programs anytime on CBN News Channel, anytime, or on our cbnnews.com website. We wish you all a fantastic weekend from all of us here from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Have a great day, great weekend. Goodbye. God bless you.